Good afternoon, world, and welcome to the Open Tech and Design Summit. My name is Geraldine de Bastion, and I am very proud to bring this program to you, which has been created by the Global Innovation Gathering and the Distributed Design Network of Europe. In this opening session, we want to say happy birthday, Republica. It's sometimes hard to believe it's been 15 years already, and also 8 years of the Global Innovation Gathering. We want to take a look back to see how has Republica influenced the lives of people, what has changed in digital rights scenes across the world, and what are our hopes for the future. So for the opening session, I've invited 3 core members of the GIG network that have been part of this journey to share some of their memories and also some of the things that they're currently working on. I would love to introduce to you now Sheila Birgen, who is currently at the Cord, where she's busy accelerating the African innovation system to be part of the global digital market. She's formerly the manager of the iHub and really one of the people who's been instrumental in elevating digital innovation in Kenya. Also warmly welcome Gabi Agustini, who is really the key person of the Make movement in Brazil and has been so instrumental in setting up events, in setting up spaces and establishing communities around the Make movement, especially also in her function as the founder and CEO of Alabi. And thirdly, I would like to very warmly welcome Jay Fajardo, who is really one of the key digital entrepreneurs of the Philippines and has shaped the digital landscape of the country over the past decades. He's also the founder and CEO of Launch Garage, one of the key innovation hubs and incubators in the Philippines. It's lovely that you could all be with me today. Hi.
Likewise.
So let's start. I would love to begin by the question, maybe you can take us back each to, what was your first Republica experience? And over the past years of having visited Republica as part of the GIG community, what have been some of the things that you've taken away and have perhaps influenced you in your work life? Jay, would you like to begin?
First.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay. I joined GIG. I was at the first GIG gathering in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. It's about 8 years ago. So, one of the things that really struck out for me was that I come from a very technology heavy space and experience, tech entrepreneur, etc. But on my visits to Republica, I realized that the innovation pace of innovation in technology has to come hand in hand with a lot of social innovation as well. Republica is actually, it's almost a sensory overload of different cultures, different experiences, different people, and from all around the world. And over the years, it's just increased and exponentially increased in effect. But like I said, the takeaway for me was bringing me away from a pure technology perspective, more towards a balanced view of innovation, which heavily includes society and people and the different experiences of folks like Sheila, folks like Gabi in their own parts of the world. So it's all different. There's a lot of nuances. It's different for us in the Philippines and Southeast Asia as well. Ever since the first year, I've always approached the work that I do with that in mind. In fact, very heavily influenced by the importance of social innovation.
That's super interesting to hear that was just a different perspective on some of the topics that you had already been working on. Maybe looking at that aspect, just a quick follow-up question. Sometimes when I look back to that first gathering that we had in 2013, I feel like And so many things have changed fundamentally since then. And maybe we were a little bit naive, even in some ways, thinking about the ways that we could have technology impact our societies. Do you share that sentiment? And what are some of the things that you feel have really changed since then, both globally, but also in regard to the situation in the Philippines?
Um, you're right about that. The change in perspective personally was pretty much that. It's I came in like with a technology view of Silicon Valley, all that hype, and I came out with much more interest and respect of innovation in the grassroots, which for me is one of the key drivers and motivations for what I've been doing over the years since then. Now, what has changed over the years in the macro perspective in the Philippines, for example? A lot has changed since 2013. Everybody knows what happened in 2016. The world drastically changed for a lot of people. I still remember we were at Republica in that year, and you could really feel how the winds of how society was going to be moving drastically changed. And it was sort of bleak. And I was talking. In fact, I was talking to we were talking about Chinmay just a while back, and we were together. So like, you know what? There's so many things that are about to change, and true enough, 2016 all the way to now, things have flipped. Things have maybe corrected in some places, but that whole naivete of the global citizen, the global community, us being things moving to a different level, where everybody respects each other, the barriers are being broken down, cultural barriers and cultural respect was being elevated. That suddenly got flipped over. So that's what changed for me. That's one of the things that I saw.
Yeah, and at the same time, that's something we're looking at preserving or maybe reinventing in a way, at least within our communities and the powers that we have. Gabi, I think, at least I hope I remember correctly, all you and also Sheila have also been part of the very first time we had the Global Innovation Gathering at Republica back in 2013. So maybe take us back a little bit. I would also love to hear from your perspective. What have been some of the memories of the things that you took away that sort of influenced your work life? Gabi, may I pass it to you next?
Hi, thank you. And I think I think my first gig was the second one in 2014. I'm not sure. I was trying even to find here, but I think like I arrived a little bit later, but it's still like a time ago. And it changed completely my perspective in the way that was great to understand more globally what was happening and what is been happening since then. Because sometimes when you are doing like something that's so new in your country, you are kind of the one or the only one or the few ones. You are part of the group that is just few ones. There is one in the city, the one is another one. And you think like you live like a kind of lack of reference, and sometimes you think like you are a bit crazy. And when you go to a conference, to a place where you can meet a lot of people from different contexts and countries that are doing something similar, you can understand that you are more part of a movement, that's something that is emerging, than like doing something that maybe doesn't make sense or whatever. So I think gig for me since the beginning and all the Republica community was a lot about like the sense of belonging and the sense of like being part of something that maybe is not mainstream, is not like the main thing at the moment, but probably will in few moments. And as we had like all these years, we could see how the things changed and how a lot of the things that we are saying like years and years ago now is like main topic, and things are like in Brazil, for example, I remember like in my first gig, things that we are doing was like so small and people are not like, giving a lot of attention. And a few years later was like things that a lot of people was working inside, and we could talk more in relevant places and things like that. So I think we could like be inspired a lot in other experience for people that are living in reality that sometimes is better than ours for like digital environments. And sometimes it's more similar, because conferences that are just like, for example, before gig, I went like for a conference that sometimes are people, you had just people from one specific country or context, and then you can localize all these topics for just like that, this reality. And when you have like such a diverse community, you can understand more a global perspective, and you can also find something that's more similar of the things that you are living. So a lot of the moments and times and experience that I had during these years in Republica and Gig was a lot about like sharing practical knowledge about like specific topics that I was facing as a challenge in my work. And I could find someone in Kenya or Philippines or whatever that was facing something similar or faced it before and could learn me, or we could share something on this topic. So I think it was a lot about this, and was a lot about understand that sometimes you have to be patient when you are in a country that's not like innovation and technology is not the main priority. Sometimes you have like, you are facing social challenges that are bigger, or you are just like in a lack of public policy or whatever. And when you have like this diversity of community, it was great to understand like, okay, let's be patient and let's build all this process. So I think it was a lot about this.
I think that's a really beautiful point that you made. A lot of the people in the gig community, and the same is true for the three of you, were really pioneers doing their work. So having a place where you can find, oh, look, there are others like me, is a super helpful thing. And you reminded me of a quote of Kutsai, who's also a member of the gig community. And I think she said so beautifully once along the lines of, coming to Republica first from Zimbabwe and attending the conference helped to get a glimpse of the future for some of the technologies we were talking about. But being part of gig and meeting the gig community made her feel at home. And that's always something I really love to think about. Sheila, how about you? And your gig journey and your Republica journey. The last time we got together in person as a community was actually not in Berlin for Republica, but in Nakuru in Kenya, and a kind of different gig gathering, but also a really beautiful one. I hope we get to recreate in the not too distant future. So yeah, I'd love to hear some of your experiences.
Well, I think my first gig, I was a bit skeptical, to be honest, because it was really hard for me to visualize what other people were doing. But secondly, I wasn't sure about the energy, because I think a lot of us are very passionate about what we do. So you don't really anticipate that you will meet people who have equal passion about their work, but also about other people. And I think for me, that was the most, I think, mind-blowing thing, the fact that we met, we did not know each other at all, and we became really close within hours. It was literally like, my name is so-and-so, and all of us were following each other everywhere. We were discussing so many things that we were doing. We were finding a lot of challenges that we were experiencing were similar. People were very open to sharing resources they had, if it was tools they were using, if it was introductions to people that, you know, were working on similar things like you are. And I think that openness is what kind of built the foundation of what the community became, because there was just, I don't know how to explain it. It was just almost like it was meant to be. And I resonate with what Kudzai mentioned about just feeling at home with strangers who you would, and even, you know, along the way, the following year, new people would come in, same thing. The year after, same thing. So I think that community continued to grow. What I think for me was even, I think, more exciting was the fact that even after we left Republica, the same energy did not die. All of us were still continuing with the conversations on email. We were continuing conversations on instant messaging applications. And You know, we were inviting each other to different countries to come and speak in our conferences, to talk to our communities. So in a way, what the world is experiencing now, we were able to experience that slightly earlier, even though it wasn't like forced. Like now, you know, we can't travel. We have to do some of, for instance, this conversation. But we had been having these conversations virtually as a community because we wanted to learn from each other. We wanted to share what we were learning and, you know, what we were experiencing. And I think what also helped with that is most of the people within the network are also very visionary around technology and intentions around growing, you know, our grassroots communities around solutions that either we were building or building with them. And so coming to GIG and seeing what other communities were doing in different countries around culture, you know, around technology, around the maker movement, you would go back with that. And because you knew someone who you would ask, you know, so how do we go about this? Do you know any open source solutions that we can use? Are there any materials that you guys use locally that you can deploy? It was always easy for people to start new initiatives, new interventions, build new communities because they'd already seen work elsewhere. And I think that really helped solidify the relationship. A lot has changed. In Kenya, for instance, in 2013, I think we were less than 5 hubs. We now have I think, over 100 in the country. So, I mean, there's just so much that has changed. You know, people are a bit skeptical around working with each other, but now I think people are more deliberate around, you know, communal approach to solving solutions. I think things that I would say networks like ours kind of pioneered in ensuring that conversations are centered around building communities, around being deliberate, providing solutions at grassroots level, but also helping each other grow as individuals, but also organizations and community at large. So I think in that sense, even within the network, a lot has changed. I think most of us have changed organization, but the mission of what we have always been doing and the passion that we've always had has remained. So I think in that sense, it's been a journey of growth. You mentioned something around naivety, which I really, really am glad we were. Because we were not naive and all of us knew it all, I don't think we would have gotten as far as we are because everyone would have come with, but I know. But all of us came with, I just want to learn. And I think that is important when you're building communities because you're more open to sharing your challenges. You find out you're not alone. You're willing to share what you've learned. You're willing to share, you know, resources. You can reach out to someone easily. And so that naivety, I hope it never changes even within the community as we grow, because I feel like we can constantly continue to learn.
Yeah, you're so right. I totally agree with that. So many beautiful things said, and I think, you know, I could always just underline everything that you've pointed out in terms of the really deep and long-lasting things that have developed from these initial meetings over the years. You've all mentioned that, of course, it's a time now that we cannot travel and we're sort of trapped in our own localities. And I would definitely want to learn from all of you how your past year has been. What have you done in the meantime, especially in regard to being able to keep working and innovating with your communities when being together physically in your innovation spaces has not always been possible. So yeah, can I begin with you, Gabi? Of course, we all understand how absolutely dire the situation regarding COVID is in Brazil currently. Can you just outline how you've managed over the last year, and perhaps also how Olabi has been trying to serve its community and support it in times of COVID?
Yeah, so it was a big challenge since the beginning, of course, because basically we just had to change completely. So we closed our space. So it's been more than 1 year that we are not open anymore, our physical space, and we changed completely our programs to the digital. So in one hand, it was hard in the beginning because we have to change a lot of methodologies, and was like everything was new for a lot of people. but we've experienced a lot of like great results and outcomes. So we had, for example, a program that is like a kind of digital literacy for elderly people that's called Aprenda com a Avó, that's like learn with a grandma. And we used to do more like hands-on training, connecting like digital skills and even like electronics and stuff with more like embroidery and more old style techniques. And then we're like, oh my God, how can we change that? It's like, in the beginning, it sounds impossible, but basically we changed this project for an online platform called with the same name, Aprenda com a Avó, where basically we are teaching like a network of people that usually is younger, like young people, teaching older people how they can use internet to give classes on the Zoom and digital platforms about the skills that they have. So if you know a lot about embroidery, you can understand how can you set this knowledge as a class, an online class, and make a course. And it was super successful. We had like more than 500 during 4 months of people from all around the country, just like getting this class online. And the course wasn't like just 1 day or 2 days. Sometimes it's like 3 months or like a lot of meetings. So basically we are kind of helping them to be more familiar with digital skills. At the same time, we're kind of acknowledging all these skills that they have already. So we changed the topic, we changed the methodology, but we still had the focus and bring more close digital skills for elderly people. And on the other hand, it was difficult in the beginning, but what we discovered in the end was that we could do something more like national. And so we are nowadays working with like grandmas and people from all over the country. So it's a network of people that are learning, people that are teaching, the elderly people that are learning and teaching at the same time. So there are a lot of layers in these networks. And they're all like, just like in every place in Brazil. So, and it's been super intense and diverse and like great to see how people are like sharing experience in these moments, especially like that we are all like inside home, or we're supposed to be inside our home. So people are kind of in need of this kind of like space to share like ideas, knowledge, and have more like this kind of things. Yeah. We also spent most of the time last year working with the pandemic in a network that was connecting initiatives that are producing PPI and this kind of medical supplies for hospitals and health service. So it was just like a way that we find to contribute. So everything was on digital, and all the trainings, all the things that we had, we just transform in digital programs. And then we gain the scale of the country and the internet. So, so the result was Olabi growth more than 100% for the last year. So we are bigger now. And we are like working a lot and doing a lot of things, but we changed our methodology and our things. We still love the idea to have a space. We still like believe in this like this kind of experience, and how can you learn when you have like presential events, face-to-face meetings. But as we don't have like any horizons when the things are getting better, we are just like investing in the things that we can do right now, and trying to learn with these and try to understand how can you adapt and how can you do something with the things that we have at the moment, and wait to open again a space when like everything could be more safe.
I didn't want to interrupt, Alia. I just said, yeah, because it's so, I hope it's okay to say this, typical of you to see the silver lining and to try to find a positive perspective in terms of seeing how you can reach more people with your work during the time of the pandemic. And yeah, even increase the work that you're doing under the most difficult of circumstances. Thank you, Gabi. Jay, I would love to hear from you next. Basically, the whole of the Philippines was literally locked at home for about a year. And you run one of the key innovation spaces. How have you managed with your community?
Well, since the lockdown, we haven't opened. just like Gabi, we still have our space, with hoping that things get better and we can all go back there and do stuff normally. But since then, we've actually been able to adjust our work methodologies. We were sort of like continuing different programs. For example, we had a program that was dealing with technology business incubators in universities around the country. And we were taking projects and ventures out of those TBIs, bringing them into the fold, and then exposing them to our mentor network, giving them advice, exposing them to our investor network. And we sort of just followed through virtually because we had no choice. And it worked out. It was pretty successful. It ended maybe, I think, Q4 of last year. And we were actually able to, in fact, find an investor for one of the ventures. So that those are the positive things that have come out. And because of that, we are about to start another one this year. It's more official now, it's more structured. Last year was a pilot, and this year is already a real thing. And this is actually with done with the Department of Science and Technology of the government. So it's a pretty good program that's adapted. People have gotten used to communicating both knowledge and advice over virtually. I guess a lot of us have been used to it even before the lockdown. So some of us have adapted very quickly, more than others. But I think at this point in time, like you said, if you're looking forward in the future, things have changed. A lot of people are more digitally savvy now. Just to survive, they had to adapt, both on learning, on communications, being able to collaborate as well, collaborating online, and the other logistical factors, financial and all that. Everybody's doing things online now, shopping, e-commerce. So
even in Germany, Jay, you wouldn't believe, even in Germany, people started doing things online for the last year. I think
well,
it's right.
I believe that. You wouldn't have survived if you wouldn't. And we've done that pretty well. And I think we're going to see a different level of digital native coming out of this. Even if we were able to come out and act normally, things are different now. People will behave differently. People will choose to stay at home because of commuting, traffic. I don't know how it is in Brazil, Gabi, but here in the Philippines, the virtual space has been a boon for those that had to travel in traffic. It's a time saver.
Yeah, I think like everything will change completely after that in cities like ours, that you probably will find like a way to stay more at home if it's not like that necessary to go. So people find that's possible to work from home, so that's something good.
Sheila, what's it been like for you? Luckily, the situation seems a little bit better in Kenya than it has in Brazil and the Philippines. How are you working with the court and your community at the moment?
Well, I think for us, because I was pivoting at the time, career-wise, I had been with IHAB for 10 years, and so I literally transitioned when we started our lockdown. So, I had plans for quad and everything, but, we're planning to do a launch, and luckily or unluckily, everything went on lockdown. So from the word go for us, we started working remotely. And I think what has been interesting is growing a team remotely or starting a business remotely when you are used to a community that was very, very physical. Like every day you would see people, and our space used to have more than 100 people daily. So it was very vibrant. There was a lot of things happening. And then all of a sudden, there's nothing, you're just yourself, and you are mostly online. And it's interesting for like a day or two, and then it really becomes hard because now you're trying to even to plug into the community. So it always has to be either chatting or calling and things like that. But also at the same time, you end up doing a lot more work than you would if you're in a physical space, because maybe you're talking to someone, maybe there's an event you're hosting. And there was initially, a bit of burnout because you would look up and then you realize, wait, it's midnight. And you constantly don't have, even times to walk. Maybe you're leaving from one place to another to go for meeting. That used to be useful. But I think over time, what has been very interesting for me is to just see how the digital community or innovation community in general has become much larger. Because of that, we were able to work in 9 countries just from the get-go, because a lot of the people are now coming into the digital space, but they did not really know, especially in the continent, how to go about that. So I think helping communities to learn to navigate the digital space, to transition to the digital space for especially traditional industries, I think has been quite interesting. One, because of the perspective of how connected physically we are and how hung up on that concept of physical meetings people were, that people are finding it really hard to transition to a digital space too. I think it has also allowed us to see how much of a bubble, and sorry to use that word, we live in for people in the innovation and technology space, because a lot more people are really struggling with very basic things that for us is a no-brainer, like even having there are several team applications that we use to manage programs, for chatting with, to measure deliverables, and very basic things for us. But for a lot of people, even huge companies, they didn't have that. It had to be, we have to meet physically. So for a lot of them, they had to shut down to strategize around moving into that space. Secondly, I think for people who are already in the innovation space, but they were also very siloed, it became really lonely because it was just you. And so it kind of forced people to think beyond just, this silo that, it's just us guys. How can we collaborate with more people? How can we find out, solutions that other people are using? How can we work together? And I think the saddest thing has been, for, at least for me, is to just see how this has also accelerated the gap between people who can access and people who can't, because it's a bit costly. You need, connectivity. We don't have connectivity everywhere. You have to have a bit of money. But for us as a team, I would say it's been really, really good, because we've really grown and grown quite fast. But for a lot of communities that we work with and people we've been able to interact with, I wouldn't say it has been the same. And so that, I think, is how the situation has been.
Yeah, what's been really fascinating listening to you is that we're obviously from very different places and very different circumstances at the moment, but I would say the exact same thing is true here. So many commonalities across the globe, once again. To finish with, I'm just going to ask you very quickly to give a little bit of a shout out. What would your birthday congratulations be for Republica, for GIG, to the next 8 and the next 15 years? What are your hopes?
I hope we don't lose the sense of bringing people together. I think closed systems, we've noticed, do not work anymore. And so for the next 15 years, I hope we can open up as many networks as possible, or as many opportunities for more people to plug into this amazing platform that Republica has continuously provided. And I hope that doesn't change. Let's bring more people in, let them experience the magic that we have been able to experience for the next 15 years.
Thank you so much. Gabi, would you like to go next?
So it's hard to predict, isn't it? Especially this time of the year, it's moments of the life, you know? So more and more I feel like that is hard to predict even in 1 or 2 months in advance, it's even like 15 years. So, but like my hope, the thing that I'm working on for is for like, to keep this idea that you can distribute power with all these technological tools and not like concentrate. So I know that we've been discussing that for more than like 15 years or since the beginning of the internet, but I still believe that we should like put efforts on this and understand that technology is not just a tool, or it's not just like technical things that are working for like optimize or make something better, but it's something that need to put like ethical values and more like the human values and the politics in the center of the process. Otherwise, we're just building tools, and we can understand that it's being like kind of weird, the words that we built. So I hope for the 15 years that we can put like the social inequality of the whole world and of every country in different levels and ways in the center of this process of the discussion of innovation and technology, and understand and try to make more ethical use of all these things. Otherwise, probably the humanity and all of us will not survive for longer. So
a hope shared, definitely. Yeah. Jay, how about you?
I guess I'd like to see Republica continue to show people like us, everybody else, the worldview that we've actually experienced over the years. More people, bring more people in, bring all the, and by worldview, the different social issues as well, bring them to the surface. It's funny that when we started, well, in 2013, the prevailing issues that we were talking about, it just came out of Arab Spring. We had the refugee issues front and center. We had the Occupy movement. That was the atmosphere then. Us coming from the Philippines, we never knew that we would have to face different issues such as human rights, digital rights in the Philippines back then. Now it's different. So things change over the years, and I hope that Republica continues to be a venue to bring this worldview to everybody, and to bring the people that it's actually attracted over the years together to help solve these social issues.
I would like to say thank you to all three of you for doing that in the session today as well, for bringing 3 different perspectives from 3 very different countries to this opening session for our program, this year's gig at Republica and Distributed Design Europe Community at Republica. And a special thanks, because Jay, for you, it's in the middle of the night. For Gabi, it's you very early in the morning. And Sheila, you have a birthday of your own to celebrate. So thank you so much for making it for this opening session, for being a part of the gig and the Republica family. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Miss you all and miss Republica.